pantyhose mystery has just been solved. And oh my God, I am so here for this. So you'll remember last week, Meghan Markle gave this completely bizarre softball interview to Bloomberg and a woman called Emily Chang. And when she was asked nothing to do with the royal family, Meghan decided that she wanted to make another dig, but this time specifically used the phrase nude pantyhose. I'll tell you why in just one moment. It involves Princess Charlotte and some terrible headlines in regards to Meghan's wedding, which she wants scrubbed from the internet. But first, just in case you missed that interview on Bloomberg, here's what Meghan said.
Is there an inherent tension in trying to be relatable while also being a duchess?
Do you remember she turned up to the Invictus Games? Now, this was before the wedding, but in ripped jeans. Now, again, totally your choice. If that's how you believe you should be shown on the international stage. But that is your choice, and it's not something that the royal family thought was a good idea, but it's also not something they told you not to do.
Well, it's like when I first met my now in-laws, I was going to wear trainers and ripped jeans, and my husband said, I maybe not wear that. And I was like, okay, no problem. I didn't take it as him saying, you must not wear ripped jeans and trainers. I thought, no, this is the first impression. I should probably not go dressed as, Lily Allen or whatever. So I wore something smarter, and I took that advice because he gave me advice that was appreciated. And, Meghan coming into this, she just couldn't deal with not being in control.
Look, this Prince Harry, Diana stuff just gets darker, I think, actually. Rob Shooter now revealing, let me take you to the story, that he is planning a movie, a Diana movie, writing, Prince Harry is reaching for the one story guaranteed to sell his late mother's. Sources tell Shooter Scoop the Duke of Sussex is in advanced talks with Netflix to produce a dramatic feature film about Princess Diana, a last-ditch gamble to rescue his fading Hollywood career. It's the ultimate card to play, one Hollywood insider explains. Nothing sells like Diana. If Harry can package her story as a movie, Netflix keeps him on the payroll. This is the hit he needs to survive. But Buckingham Palace is already livid. Courtiers called the potential project exploitative and warn it could reopen decades-old wounds about Diana's turbulent life and tragic death. William is particularly outraged but not surprised, one royal source says. To him, their mother's memory is sacred, not something to be bargained in a Netflix deal. Harry and Meghan's $100 million Netflix contract has already been quietly reduced after disappointing viewership for previous projects, including Meghan's lifestyle show. Lauren Lunn-Farrow, one you speak about a lot, the mainstream media losing their power and having to be driven by the audiences. Now, of course, I always believe in fair criticism of all members of the royal family. I do believe in that, and not everyone likes my coverage of all members of the royal family. However, Lauren, this was a different thing going on with the Daily Mail. It was so transparent what they were doing. The attack dogs were unleashed, Amanda Patel, Liz Jones. It was like following all of the talking points from Montecito. And it was awful. It was over the top and awful. It wasn't like fair criticism about individual points. It was like a total takedown of this couple, basically just because they'd helped the son out on a story in regards to their future home.
Yeah, I think this is the Mail. They were dipping their toe to see how it went, and I think they thought their readers may be getting narrative fatigue.
What's really interesting though is that I think Meghan has become quite obsessed with the specifics of the circumstances with Charlotte, for good reason really, because how on earth do you recover, Lauren, from, and this is very much my understanding, of making your niece, right? Your young niece totally distraught on your wedding day. It's totally unacceptable. Plus, she was so burnt by the story about making Catherine cry. And you'll remember she even, in Spare, via Prince Harry, allowed her husband, or I would argue encouraged her husband, to publish private text message correspondence between Catherine and Meghan, which he claimed proved her position. I'm not sure it does. I mean, this is the text exchange. Netflix can pick and choose, just like it now picks and chooses with the Obamas. Look, I want to get an update from you on this Daily Mail campaign against Catherine and William, which has been raging, because Canal Citadel, who I think always does really great analysis, has really looked into this and has sort of discovered actually that Daily Mail supporters are turning off them because of their constant attacks on Catherine and William. So look at this. She writes, after the Daily Mail going on a full week of attack on the Prince and Princess of Wales last week, crowned with their nastiest Palace Confidential episode centred on bashing the Wales and promoting Harry, they found out exactly how the public felt. The video was for the first time split with 11,000 dislikes to 11,000 likes. Per AI analysis, out of 4,632 comments, 96% were negative and only 3.87% were neutral or positive. People were talking about unsubscribing and they meant business. Why did Meghan specifically use the term nude pantyhose? Well, in another part of the interview, she spoke about knowing what SEO is. SEO stands for search engine optimization. Meghan was trying to bury a story from the past that she has become embarrassed about. As Meghan's mole explained, the real reason why Meghan Markle released that stupid story about pantyhose, when you search Meghan and pantyhose, nothing about her bullying Princess Charlotte over hose during that spectacle wedding pops up. It was all about manipulating the SEO. Lauren Lunn Farrow, PR professional extraordinaire. She's represented many of the stars, royal commentator and YouTuber, joins me now. Lauren, Meghan is so crafty, but she's not as clever as she thinks. That is what it is. I mean, that is the reality.
Yeah.
And this is the problem.
It's very classless. And, like I say, obviously he lost his mother, and I'm aware that he would probably want to do something in her honor, but this to me doesn't feel like she would be honored for any reason apart from bank balance. And that doesn't feel good at all. It doesn't feel good that he would use that to capitalize, to keep a deal that is. We've seen Netflix don't want the deal. Everyone said, oh, it's a new deal. No, it's not. There's a clause in every single contract whereby you give them first refusal of future projects. That's all it is. So, we know it's done and dusted unless Harry and Meghan pull something mega out of the case, and this is, to me, a last-ditch attempt, and it's a classless one, because we have many other examples of where she has been catty, not very nice, the countless bullying allegations. This isn't a one-off that someone has thought, this is really unfair and inaccurate, I want it taken out of, the Google search frame. No, there are so many examples of her behaving like this. So it will continue to spiral out of control, and, she might have been able to squash one story, but she can't change public perception regardless of who her SEO expert may or may not be.
How common is it, Charlotte? I mean, you have worked with Lauren. Charlotte's on my mind. Princess Charlotte's on my mind. Lauren, how common is it for celebrities? I mean, you've worked with a whole load of the biggest celebrities in the United Kingdom.
And then, you get the Sussex squad going, you woman basher, anything she does is wrong. No, but, you can lead a horse to water, but if it's not going to drink, what can you do? Totally.
And at the end of the day, I know, because I know the courtiers, I know the people that were working behind the scenes at that time, the members of the Sussex Survivors Club too, and they were very, very much going down the path of, look, we do accept that this is not some young virgin. Do you know what I mean? This is not Princess Diana, or this is not some innocent girl just straight out of university. This is an accomplished professional. I mean, Lauren, for God's sake, they wanted her to continue acting. It's like it is just a totally twisted narrative. Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely, she was bridezilla. And remember, Catherine had quite recently, given birth to Louis. There was all of that going on too. And of course, it was a stressful time, but exactly, it's about the reasons why. And then you come back to the pantyhose claim anyway, Lauren. And by the way, there's lots of pictures, and we've got a whole load of them, of Meghan wearing nude pantyhose. But again, my sources are absolutely clear. Meghan was never told by a courtier, you must wear this. Any advice was given in the nature of trying to help this woman, trying to make things better for her, which of course she moaned about in the Oprah interview, didn't she? When she tried to claim that no one had helped her. Well, that was rubbish. And the idea that Meghan was some shrinking little depressed violet who couldn't stand up for herself, well, it's just proven by that photo, this photo right here, because she was advised that day, Lauren, to wear a hat. She was advised to wear a hat.
It sounded innocent, silly even. Meghan Markle, sitting in a polished Bloomberg interview, suddenly talks about pantyhose. Not the royal family, not charity work, not the Sussex brand, pantyhose. Nude pantyhose, to be exact. Delivered with a smirk, wrapped in nostalgia about the 1980s, and eggshell packaging. It was strange, random, unnecessary. But here's the twist. It wasn't random at all, because the moment she said those words, the internet changed. Search Meghan Markle pantyhose now, and what do you see? Not the old headlines. Not the viral gossip from her wedding week. Not the brutal accusations of how Princess Charlotte was allegedly left in tears. You see this, her Bloomberg interview, her quote, her smirk. The new version of the event is freshly minted and SEO-optimized for 25. This wasn't an offhand remark. This was a surgical strike. Sources close to the royals say Meghan's comment was a calculated move, a PR distraction designed to erase a damaging piece of history. And it almost worked. By tossing nude pantyhose into the global conversation, Meghan flooded Google's algorithm with a new headline, one she controlled. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about her rumored cruelty to a crying child. It was about Meghan's authenticity, her comfort, her voice, and the timing, chillingly precise. Because just days before, royal gossip forums had reignited the infamous story of Meghan clashing with Princess Charlotte over a poorly tailored bridesmaid dress. Photos were circulating, Reddit threads were trending, and out of nowhere, Meghan gives an interview about tights. No coincidence. This was reputation management by way of keyword poisoning. She didn't deny the story. She didn't correct the record. She simply replaced it. One phrase, one headline. And the damaging narrative gets buried 6 feet deep under SEO. That's not transparency. That's strategy. But here's the problem with manipulating search engines. It only works if people aren't paying attention. And Meghan, people are paying attention. In fact, the backlash has already started. PR analysts, media experts, and former royal insiders are calling it out for what it is, an artificial rewrite of a royal scandal. And now that we've pulled back the curtain, the question isn't why Meghan said what she said. It's what she was so desperate to bury. And as you'll see next, it all goes back to one flower girl, one dress, and one royal wedding that Meghan Markle wishes you'd forget ever happened. The royal wedding between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle was supposed to be a fairy tale, historic, glamorous, unifying. But behind the scenes, away from the crowds and flashing cameras, something much darker was reportedly unfolding. A moment of tension, tears, and whispered fallout that Meghan has been trying to bury ever since. At the heart of it all, a then 3-year-old Princess Charlotte, and a tiny white bridesmaid dress. For years, rumors swirled about a pre-wedding altercation between Meghan and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Some said Meghan made Kate cry. Others, including Meghan herself, claimed the opposite, that Kate made her cry. But the most telling piece of evidence didn't come from palace leaks or anonymous insiders. It came from Prince Harry's own memoir, Spare. In it, Harry includes a series of text messages between Meghan and Catherine, just days before the wedding. Catherine complains that Charlotte's dress is too big, too long, too baggy. She says Charlotte cried when she tried it on at home. Meghan's response? Cold and transactional. The tailor has been standing by since 8 a.m. Can you take Charlotte to have it altered as the other moms are doing? Catherine replies that all the dresses need to be remade. Meghan pushes back again. If the dress doesn't fit, then please take Charlotte to see AJ. He's been waiting all day. The exchange ends with a terse, "Fine." Now, this isn't just about a dress, it's about tone, power dynamics, sensitivity. Meghan's defenders argue she was being practical, delegating wedding stress. But to many readers, her tone came across as dismissive, especially toward a mother whose child was reportedly in tears. And the fact that the child was Princess Charlotte, daughter of the future king, only raised the stakes. But here's where the story deepens, and why Meghan's recent SEO distraction is so revealing. Critics argue that Meghan's mention of nude pantyhose in the Bloomberg interview was a sly digital bait and switch. In the same breath that she was reminiscing about 1980s hosiery, she also brought up being forced to dress a certain way as a royal. The implication? That she was stifled, micromanaged, denied authenticity. And by dropping that phrase, nude pantyhose, she flooded Google search results with her version of the story. Why that phrase? Why now? Because when people used to Google Meghan Markle pantyhose, what came up wasn't just fashion commentary, it was that story. The one about Charlotte, the crying, the dress, the tension, the accusations of bullying. It was one of the most humanizing yet controversial royal moments in Meghan's timeline. And to many, one of the clearest signs that the fairy tale image didn't match the behind-the-scenes behavior. And now, that story is buried beneath a wave of puff piece headlines and SEO-friendly fluff. But not for long. You see, the internet never forgets, and neither does the public. Especially not when it comes to children, and especially not when those children are royal. Charlotte's tears may have dried, the dress may have been fixed, but the memory of Meghan allegedly bulldozing through the sensitivities of a mother and child has lingered. And it speaks to a pattern that critics say defines her time in the royal family. Control over compassion, optics over authenticity. Even more damning, fashion experts have weighed in, confirming what Catherine reportedly saw from the beginning. The dresses weren't properly made. A seamstress quoted in follow-up reports said Charlotte's hem was uneven and the tailoring was shoddy. Catherine, always protective of her children, simply wanted her daughter to look appropriate on the world stage. And for daring to say so, she got branded as the villain in Spare. But maybe that's the real story Meghan wants erased. Not just the dress or the crying, but the idea that someone else in the room might have had a point. That Catherine wasn't being difficult. That maybe, just maybe, Charlotte did cry. That even with all her media savvy and rehearsed grace, Meghan might have been the one who misread the moment. And now, years later, that quiet royal moment has turned into a public relations battlefield. But this wasn't just a personal misstep. It was a sign of how Meghan operates behind the scenes. And next, we'll look at how her SEO tactics reveal a pattern of rewriting the past, one Google result at a time. On the surface, it looked like an offbeat anecdote. Meghan Markle, laughing about pantyhose on Bloomberg. A quirky throwback, maybe even a light jab at royal fashion traditions. But for those paying attention, it was something much more strategic. A surgical PR play, designed not just to distract, but to delete. This wasn't a conversation about hosiery. It was a lesson in digital manipulation, executed live on air. Let's break it down. Meghan's use of the phrase nude pantyhose wasn't spontaneous. It was a trigger, an algorithmic smoke bomb. She knew exactly what she was doing when she said it, because seconds later, she casually mentioned her understanding of SEO, search engine optimization. That's not a term your average duchess drops into a lifestyle interview. It's the language of marketers, brand strategists, and public relations operatives. And Meghan wasn't using it by accident. She was signaling her intent by name-dropping a specific search term, nude pantyhose. Meghan planted a digital seed, one designed to grow quickly and take over the search results connected to her name. It worked like this. Prior to this interview, a Google search of Meghan Markle pantyhose would pull up old stories about her clash with Catherine over Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid outfit. Stories involving crying children, poorly sewn hems, and alleged royal bullying. But post-interview, that same search became flooded with glowing coverage of her Bloomberg appearance. Headlines about her empowerment, her authenticity, her freedom to dress how she wants. The old story didn't vanish, but it was buried, pushed down the algorithm, drowned out by Meghan's latest carefully curated narrative. This is digital reputation management 101. But instead of hiring a firm to scrub her image, Meghan took the microphone herself. It was subtle, it was smart, and it was deeply manipulative. Even PR experts were taken aback. Royal commentator and media consultant Lauren Lanphier called it out immediately. She pointed out how deliberate the tactic was, and how clumsy Meghan was in trying to cover it up. She's not as clever as she thinks, Lauren said, because she literally bragged about knowing SEO right after dropping the exact phrase she wanted to flood the internet with. That's the giveaway. If Meghan hadn't mentioned SEO, people might have bought into the idea that the pantyhose reference was just a silly throwaway. But by connecting the dots herself, she revealed the real plan. Replace the story, don't confront it. And she's done it before. Meghan's media strategy has long been described as over-controlled. Former palace insiders have said that nothing about her public image is left to chance. Every photo op, every quote, every off-the-cuff comment is tightly rehearsed and often coordinated with PR professionals. In this case, it appears she was once again trying to rewrite a narrative, not by explaining it, not by denying it, but by burying it under a flood of curated content. But this move triggered more backlash than she anticipated. Because here's the irony. In trying to erase the Princess Charlotte dress scandal, Meghan accidentally reignited it. Viewers who had forgotten the details were suddenly reminded. Online sleuths compared timestamps, search results, and trends. And now, instead of quietly burying a minor scandal, Meghan had poured gasoline on it, and it goes deeper. Royal insiders have confirmed that there was no mandate for Meghan to wear nude pantyhose. It was simply suggested as part of the Queen's time-honored preferences for formality and presentation. Meghan wasn't forced into anything, but by retelling the story as if she were shackled by outdated rules, she positioned herself as the outsider, the rebel, the misunderstood heroine, all while planting a keyword bomb into the digital ecosystem. But again, why bring this up now? Why open the door to the Charlotte story again? Because this wasn't about tights, it was about control. Control of the narrative, control of the archives, control of what people see when they Google your name. Meghan wasn't just changing clothes, she was changing history, or trying to. And here's the terrifying part. She almost pulled it off. For a few days, it worked. Media outlets picked up the nude pantyhose quote and ran with it. Fashion bloggers applauded her freedom. Lifestyle writers echoed her claim that the royal rules were oppressive. But beneath all that fluff, something sinister was happening. A calculated attempt to overwrite a child's pain, a mother's concern, a moment of real emotion that no longer fit the brand. And in doing so, Meghan confirmed what her critics have been saying for years, that she's not just playing the game, she's trying to rig the system. But the truth? The internet always remembers. And if there's one thing SEO can't bury, it's a royal scandal that touches a child. How the actual dress drama unfolded, the photos, the fashion expert analysis, and why the text messages Prince Harry included in Spare may have done more harm than good. It was supposed to be perfect. The music, the flowers, the global stage. Meghan Markle's wedding to Prince Harry was watched by millions. But beneath the layers of satin and ceremony, a storm was brewing, and it was stitched into the hem of a child's dress. The now infamous bridesmaid incident involving Princess Charlotte has become one of the most whispered about scandals in royal wedding history. And yet, it never truly went away. Why? Because the details, the real ones, never stopped resurfacing. It started quite simply with a dress that didn't fit. According to the text messages published by Prince Harry in Spare, Catherine, Princess of Wales, reached out to Meghan just days before the wedding. Her daughter Charlotte had tried on her bridesmaid dress and burst into tears. Catherine's message was calm but clear. The dress was too big, too long, too baggy. Meghan, in response, insisted the royal tailor, AJ, had been standing by since A&Z, and that Catherine should simply bring Charlotte in for alterations. At first glance, it's an ordinary pre-wedding disagreement, but read between the lines, and something colder starts to emerge. Catherine wasn't just a concerned mother. She was a woman who had given birth just weeks earlier, juggling the emotional weight of a massive royal event and the well-being of her young daughter. Meghan's response, however, lacked warmth. No comfort, no reassurance, just logistics. It was all business. Meghan's defenders called it practical. Critics called it dismissive. What made it worse was that Meghan later weaponized this exchange in the Oprah interview, and again through Harry's memoir, painting Catherine as uptight, unyielding, and difficult to please. But what Meghan didn't realize is that the public doesn't forget when it comes to children. The idea of Charlotte crying, her mother stressing, and Meghan brushing it off, it didn't sit right. It still doesn't. And the visual evidence only deepened the controversy. Photos from the royal wedding show Princess Charlotte in a white Givenchy dress. Adorable, but noticeably ill-fitted. The hem is awkward. The shape is slightly shapeless. For an event of this scale, it raised eyebrows. Royal watchers began to question how such an oversight could have occurred, and why Meghan seemed so unwilling to accommodate Catherine's concerns. Then came the expert voices. One professional seamstress, interviewed anonymously by the British press, confirmed that the bridesmaid dresses were clearly rushed. She described the hemline on Charlotte's dress as unfinished, and said the lack of tailoring was surprising for a royal wedding. According to her, any experienced designer would have insisted on proper fittings, especially for young children in a high-stakes event. Catherine saw it coming. She was right to be worried. But Meghan, reportedly fixated on controlling the details of her day, allegedly resisted even basic suggestions. Multiple palace insiders later claimed that Meghan snapped at Catherine during a dress rehearsal. Another source said the atmosphere between the women was frosty at best. Even Queen Elizabeth was said to be aware of the tension, and disappointed that such drama had clouded a day meant for unity. Yet Meghan wasn't finished. In Spare, Harry frames the entire exchange as proof that Meghan was the real victim. The message, according to him, was that Catherine had overreacted, that she was the one being difficult. But here's the twist. At the end of that same text exchange, Catherine agrees to take Charlotte to the tailor. She gave in. She did what Meghan wanted. And somehow, she still became the villain in Meghan's version of the story. This tactic of showing selective receipts and spinning them as vindication has backfired. Readers of Spare weren't convinced. The texts didn't reveal abuse or cruelty from Catherine. If anything, they revealed a woman trying to protect her daughter's dignity in front of the global press. A mother who knew the weight of that moment and wanted her little girl to feel confident, beautiful, and secure. And here's the kicker. After all that fuss, Meghan is now trying to rebrand the entire incident by pivoting the conversation to pantyhose. By complaining about being forced to wear nude tights, she reframes herself as the oppressed outsider. But in doing so, she opens the door right back to the actual scandal she tried to bury. A wedding week marked by tension, ego, and the tears of a child who didn't understand why her dress made her feel wrong. It's not about tights. It never was. It's about control, compassion, and contradiction. Meghan wants to be seen as the victim of royal rigidity. But when given the chance to show empathy, to bend, to soften, to listen, she allegedly chose dominance. And Charlotte, just a toddler at the time, was caught in the middle. That's the part the public doesn't forget, and no amount of SEO tampering can erase it. The myth of the pantyhose rule, why Meghan's claim about being forced to wear them falls apart under scrutiny, and how a simple fashion detail became a weapon in the battle for public sympathy. When Meghan Markle sat down for her polished Bloomberg interview and uttered the phrase "nude pantyhose," it seemed like a passing joke, a harmless complaint. She claimed that in her early royal days, she was forced to wear them, that it wasn't very me, and that the whole idea felt like something out of a movie from the 1980s. She delivered the line with a chuckle, wrapping it in authenticity and self-expression. But behind the smirk was a deeper goal, and it's time to unpack why this pantyhose narrative is not just misleading, but provably false. Let's start with the facts. There is no formal royal rule requiring female members of the royal family to wear nude pantyhose. None. Not in official protocol, not in palace policy, not in Queen Elizabeth's personal etiquette guide. The idea that Meghan was forced to wear tights by some oppressive royal system is a myth, a story spun to support a larger narrative of victimhood. What does exist is a long-standing tradition, a preference shaped by decades of appearances where modesty and formality were considered a visual expression of respect for the institution. But even that tradition isn't enforced. Photographic evidence shows Catherine, Princess of Wales, at multiple public events without hosiery. Other royal women have done the same, especially in private settings, warmer climates, or when the occasion allowed for a more casual appearance. So why did Meghan single out pantyhose as her symbol of oppression? Because it's easily manipulated, it sounds outdated, it sounds restrictive. It feeds the modern viewer's instinct to side with rebellion, to roll their eyes at stuffy old-fashioned rules. And Meghan knows this. By casting the royal household as archaic fashion tyrants, she instantly wins sympathy from younger, trend-savvy audiences who believe individuality should always trump protocol. But here's where the lie falls apart. Meghan was never forced to wear nude pantyhose. In fact, there are numerous public photographs of Meghan proudly wearing them, often before she officially joined the royal family. She even wore them during public engagements, smiling next to Queen Elizabeth II, looking elegant and poised. Not only that, but there were media puff pieces at the time, praising her graceful transition into royal style, some even suggesting that she liked M&S pantyhose. Yes, the same kind of nude tights she later tried to weaponize in her Bloomberg interview. So what changed? Simple. Public opinion. When the Charlotte dress scandal began to gain traction again online, especially after Spare, Meghan needed a distraction. But not just any distraction. She needed a keyword bomb. Something subtle enough to sound personal, but strong enough to hijack search results. Nude pantyhose was the perfect bait, and she baited it perfectly. But here's the problem. People remember. They remember the countless images of Meghan's early days in the firm, walking beside the Queen, dressed conservatively, smiling for the press. They remember the headlines that said she was fitting in, that she had embraced tradition with a modern twist. No one, not one verified source, has ever come forward to say she was forced into pantyhose, scolded for non-compliance, or publicly embarrassed for choosing her own wardrobe. In fact, quite the opposite. Royal aides have gone on record stating that suggestions were given in good faith, not as commands. Meghan was treated with dignity, with an effort to make her feel welcome. But as insiders have consistently said, Meghan didn't like suggestions. She didn't want guidance. She wanted control. And the moment she felt that control slipping, she reframed it as persecution. Now, in 2025, she's trying to backpedal. Not with apologies or clarifications, but with search engine manipulation. Her new pantyhose narrative isn't an act of truth-telling. It's digital damage control, a sleight of hand. She wants the world to look at her wedding controversies and see a woman crushed under royal expectations, when in reality, she was given more leeway than any outsider in modern royal history. And perhaps the most damning detail of all, sources reveal that on the very day Meghan allegedly refused to wear a hat during a joint appearance with the Queen, even after being kindly advised to do so, Her Majesty still smiled beside her, still laughed, still showed warmth and patience. That wasn't a monarchy forcing tights onto an unwilling American. That was a family, however flawed, trying to make room for someone who didn't want to play by any rules, not even the unspoken ones. So when Meghan says the pantyhose made her feel inauthentic, maybe that part's true. Because nothing about this new narrative feels authentic. Not the SEO spin, not the teary-eyed revisionism, not the carefully timed interview that just so happens to coincide with renewed interest in a little girl's tears. Meghan wants us to believe she was silenced by sheer fabric, but the only thing transparent here is the lie. Why Meghan's obsession with optics led to far more than just fashion choices, and how Bridezilla allegations behind the scenes began to snowball into a pattern of self-sabotage and staff unrest. There's a reason the term Bridezilla became part of modern culture. It captures a certain kind of chaos, the need for absolute control, the emotional blow-ups, the unwillingness to compromise. And while it's often used as a tongue-in-cheek exaggeration, in Meghan Markle's case, royal insiders say the term wasn't just whispered behind palace doors, it was confirmed through behavior. The bridesmaid dress drama involving Princess Charlotte wasn't a one-off incident. It was the beginning of a pattern, one that staff, aides, and even members of the royal family began to see unfold in real time. Meghan wasn't just meticulous, she was reportedly unyielding. And for a family built on diplomacy and quiet cooperation, that spelled trouble from the very beginning. According to multiple palace sources, some of whom later became known collectively as the Sussex Survivors Club, the weeks leading up to the royal wedding were marked by mounting tension and emotional exhaustion. Meghan's demands reportedly went far beyond the usual wedding stress. From clashes over the guest list to disagreements about seating arrangements, to last-minute alterations and staff working around the clock, there was little room for flexibility or dissent. Even seasoned royal courtiers, people who had worked under the Queen herself, described Meghan's style as militant. One former staff member was quoted anonymously saying, "It wasn't that she asked for things, it's how she asked, or rather, how she demanded." Staffers allegedly found themselves caught between Meghan's orders and long-standing royal protocol. And when those two clashed, Meghan expected the institution to bend, not her. Catherine, who had just given birth to Prince Louis less than a month before the wedding, was navigating postpartum recovery, while also trying to support her daughter through the biggest public appearance of her young life. Charlotte's dress wasn't a fashion issue. It was an emotional one. But Meghan, according to those present, refused to see it that way. One palace insider recalled Meghan referring to her wedding as a solo production, not a family event, but her moment. There was reportedly little collaboration, little empathy, and very little room for anyone else's input. And as the pressure mounted, so did the resentment. By the time the big day arrived, the public saw a beautiful ceremony, a glowing bride, and a proud groom. But behind the scenes, the damage was done. Aides began quietly resigning in the months that followed. Stories leaked of emotional breakdowns, of staff brought to tears by Meghan's treatment. The tabloids initially brushed it off as misogynistic exaggeration, but as more and more corroborating accounts emerged, a clearer picture began to form. And it wasn't just the staff noticing. Queen Elizabeth, known for her cool head and diplomatic restraint, was reportedly disappointed in the wedding week fallout. While she publicly welcomed Meghan with warmth, laughing alongside her during joint engagements, she was also aware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. According to respected royal correspondents, the Queen had hoped Meghan would embrace the institution, not try to bulldoze it. But Meghan seemed determined to challenge everything: protocol, expectations, even simple traditions, like wearing a hat at formal events. One story that stuck out to palace staff involved Meghan being gently advised to wear a hat for a royal appearance with the Queen. Not commanded, advised. Meghan reportedly refused, and the Queen, ever composed, smiled through it. But the private reaction was said to be one of disappointment, not just in the decision, but in Meghan's unwillingness to read the room. And yet, years later, Meghan tells a story of being stifled, controlled, and silenced. She frames herself as a victim of a rigid, uncaring system. But for those who were there, it wasn't the palace that was difficult. It was Meghan. Take the pantyhose again. Royal stylists say she was given options, suggestions, never orders. Meghan's narrative paints courtiers as fashion dictators, forcing her into beige hosiery. But the reality? She had full freedom to choose her look. In fact, she often did. The problem wasn't that Meghan was told what to wear. It's that she refused to listen to even the softest advice. And when that advice came from people with decades of experience serving the monarchy, The refusal became more than just a fashion rebellion. It became a symbol of defiance. And it didn't stop at clothing. From PR coordination to speech planning to charity commitments, Meghan reportedly demanded the final say in everything. Her team often found themselves rewriting press releases at the last minute, adjusting event schedules to match her preferences, and fielding calls from frustrated departments trying to coordinate logistics. It was chaos masquerading as confidence. And the fallout didn't just stay in Kensington Palace. After the wedding, as the press began reporting on staff turnover and morale issues, Meghan's team responded by attacking the narrative, blaming racism, sexism, and institutional resistance. But while prejudice certainly exists in the UK media, the internal complaints weren't coming from tabloids, they were coming from inside the house. That's why the Bridezilla label stuck. Not because it was a convenient media trope, but because too many people, in too many rooms, experienced the same behavior. Demands, dismissals, disregard. Meghan's defenders will say she was under immense pressure. And that's true. She was a biracial American actress, navigating a centuries-old institution built by and for white aristocrats. But pressure doesn't excuse cruelty. And empathy shouldn't be a casualty of stress. In the end, the real tragedy isn't just that Meghan clashed with staff. It's that she never truly understood the opportunity she was given. To be a bridge, to be a modernizer, to be different in the best possible way. Instead, she chose to fight battles that didn't need to be fought. And the first of those battles? A little girl's dress, the Diana Project. Why Prince Harry's alleged Netflix plans to dramatize his mother's life are causing outrage behind palace walls, and how it all connects to the couple's desperate grasp for relevance. It was always inevitable. At some point, Prince Harry would reach for the one story powerful enough to break the internet and break the silence. His mother was Diana, Princess of Wales. Her legacy, her trauma, her tragedy, her global icon status. It's a story that still commands headlines, sympathy, and clicks, decades after her untimely death. And now, according to Hollywood insiders and royal correspondents, that legacy is no longer sacred. It's for sale. Reports have emerged that Harry is in advanced talks with Netflix to produce a feature film, not a documentary, but a dramatized movie, centered around his mother's life. Not just her public persona, but her private torment. She struggles with the media, her isolation within the palace, her complicated relationships, romantic and otherwise. If true, this would mark a radical, and to some, disturbing, escalation in the Sussexes' ongoing campaign to monetize royal trauma. And the reaction inside Buckingham Palace? Explosive. Royal sources claim that Prince William is incandescent with rage. To him, Diana's memory is sacred. It's not just personal, it's untouchable. And while both brothers have always shared a deep emotional bond over their mother's loss, they've had a long-standing agreement. Diana's story would never be exploited. Not for money, not for media, not for Netflix. But now, that unspoken pact appears to be shattered. The idea of a dramatized film, written, produced, and endorsed by Harry, is being seen by some in the palace as a betrayal of the highest order. Not just of the monarchy, but of Diana herself. Nothing sells like Diana, one Hollywood executive allegedly told a reporter. And Harry knows it. But that's precisely the problem. When your last card is your mother's trauma, it says everything about where your brand has gone. And make no mistake, this isn't about honoring her memory. This is about leverage. Netflix is reportedly cooling on the Sussexes. Their first look deal was hyped as revolutionary. 100 million creative freedom, global reach. But behind the scenes, the numbers tell a different story. Meghan's With Love lifestyle series fizzled. Harry's polo documentary was a non-starter. Their Heart of Invictus project landed with a dull thud. Viewership tanked. Buzz evaporated. And now, the couple reportedly faces a quiet downgrade of their deal, which is where Diana comes in. A Diana film, especially one with Harry's seal of approval, would be the crown jewel of content. Netflix knows this, and Harry knows they know. By dangling this project, Harry isn't just honoring his mother, he's bargaining with her legacy, creating a situation where Netflix can't say no, and where he regains power in a room that's been quietly pushing him out. But here's the twist. It's not the first time Diana has been used like this. Back in 2022, The Crown faced intense scrutiny over its depiction of Diana's final years. Critics argued that dramatizing her pain for entertainment was exploitative. Even then, Harry was working with Netflix. He didn't speak out. He didn't protest. Now, by launching his own dramatized Diana project, he crosses the line from bystander to active participant. And that's what has the royal family stunned. This isn't just a documentary with family photos and tearful narration. This is a scripted movie, an artistic interpretation, a glossy production that could bend facts, insert fictional dialogue, and turn one of the most heartbreaking stories in royal history into a streaming spectacle. It's not remembrance, it's dramatization with a price tag. And what about Diana's wishes? Sources close to the late princess have long said she valued her privacy above all, that she feared being misunderstood, misrepresented, and misquoted. Her struggles with the press were legendary. Relentless paparazzi, tabloid betrayal, phone hacking scandals. She often told friends she wished her story could be told with compassion and dignity. Would a Netflix blockbuster fulfill that wish? Or turn her legacy into a plot device? Even worse, this could backfire spectacularly. Because if Harry puts his stamp of approval on a dramatized Diana project, he opens the floodgates. Suddenly, the press has license to rehash every detail, every affair, every bulimia rumor, every conspiracy theory. Royal commentators, hungry for traffic, will dissect the film scene by scene, and Harry won't be able to play the victim. He'll be the author. It's a risky move, one driven, perhaps, by desperation. And this desperation isn't just about relevancy, it's financial. Meghan's brand has underperformed. Their Spotify deal collapsed. Book sales spiked, then crashed. Their Netflix portfolio is thin, underwatched, and widely mocked. If the Diana film doesn't land, if it's seen as exploitative or tasteless, the backlash could be brutal and permanent. But for Harry, this may be the last chip left to play, a Hail Mary. Because when your marriage is floundering in the polls, your documentaries are forgettable, and your wife's branding empire is imploding, there's only one way to stay in the game. Sell the one story the world never stops craving. The story of a princess, his mother, and the pain, he says, the world never truly understood. Desperation in Montecito. As the Sussexes scramble to stay relevant, Meghan's alleged talk show ambitions and behind-the-scenes charm campaigns reveal a deeper anxiety and a much weaker grip on power. Behind the glossy Instagram photos, curated kitchen counters, and slow-motion shots of chicken coops, something is cracking in Montecito. The multi-million-dollar mansion may still sparkle on the outside, but inside, insiders say the Sussexes are spiraling. With media deals drying up, public interest fading, and internal staff reportedly burned out or walking away, Harry and Meghan's once unshakable brand is teetering on the edge. What was once hailed as a new American royal empire is beginning to look like a beautifully packaged crisis. And desperation? It's leaking through every frame. Let's start with Netflix. The $100 million deal that was supposed to launch the Sussexes as media moguls has been quietly scaled back. First came the polite spin, Netflix expressing continued interest in their stories. But behind closed doors, executives were fuming. Meghan's With Love lifestyle series fizzled, barely making a dent in the algorithm. Harry's Heart of Invictus documentary was inspiring, but underpromoted and underwatched. And their planned animated series? Canceled before it even aired. Suddenly, the couple that was promised a media kingdom was being told, you need a hit, or you're out. Cue the Diana movie gamble. But even that's not the only card being played. Insiders have reported that Meghan is now aggressively pitching herself as a talk show host. Not a guest, a host. Think Oprah too. Zero, but with green juice, luxury flatware, and carefully scripted, authentic moments. According to journalist Maureen Callahan and others close to the entertainment industry, Meghan's team has quietly reached out to producers, networks, and streaming platforms with a package deal. Meghan as the next big daytime name. But here's the problem. Nobody's buying. The optics are off. She's polarizing. She's seen as over-rehearsed, under-relatable, and too caught up in her own mythology to carry a show that demands warmth and spontaneity. One executive reportedly described her as having the presence of someone still auditioning for the role of themselves, and worse, the numbers don't support her pitch. Her podcast? Dropped by Spotify. Her Netflix show? Globally mocked. Her social media reach? Non-existent since she abandoned her original Instagram handle. So what's the plan? Charm and pressure. Several reports suggest Meghan and Harry have turned to old-school tactics to stay relevant. Gifts, dinner invites, personalized baskets. One Hollywood insider joked that you can't walk through Montecito without tripping over a Sussex gift bag. It's all about keeping the door open, reminding power players that they're still in the game. But those doors? They're quietly closing. Even Netflix, which once bent over backward to accommodate their whims, is said to be treating the Sussexes like any other talent now. No more special treatment. No more automatic green lights. They want numbers, proof, and the Sussexes haven't delivered. The same goes for Spotify. The couple's Archetypes podcast was loudly promoted, but quickly fell flat. Critics called it stiff, overly scripted, and lacking any real insight. Worse, Meghan reportedly canceled a second season after receiving negative feedback. Not from the public, but from producers. They wanted more vulnerability, more unscripted moments. Meghan wanted control. And when Meghan doesn't control the narrative, she walks away. It's a pattern, one that former palace staff recognized, one that Hollywood is now beginning to see. And with every project that fizzles, the options shrink. Meghan's brand was built on image, relatability, elegance, and social justice. But the public isn't buying the story anymore. The audience isn't hate-watching like they used to. They're ignoring. And in Hollywood, that's worse than backlash. It's irrelevance. Which brings us back to Montecito. Sources say the mood inside the mansion is tense. The staff is leaner. Meetings have turned into echo chambers. The couple is said to be surrounded by a shrinking group of yes people, PR strategists and media handlers trying to spin failure into frictionless press releases. But at the core, it's panic, controlled panic. Because the truth is, they bet everything on becoming global content creators, and the world has moved on. Even their own narratives are starting to collide. Meghan claims she was silenced in the UK, but now she won't stop talking. Harry says he wants privacy, but he's negotiating film deals about his mother's most traumatic moments. Their authenticity messaging falls apart under the weight of their own contradictions. And when that happens, the brand doesn't evolve. It collapses. The dream of being a modern, woke, influential royal power couple in America is unraveling. Fast. They were supposed to be the Obamas of Hollywood. Speaking engagements, bestseller lists, Netflix dominance. But even the Obamas have distanced themselves. Meghan's new network of supporters includes a few influencers, minor stylists, and ghostwriters. The big names, they've gone quiet. And here's the most telling part. Meghan is still trying to relaunch. There are rumors of a new Instagram, a new brand, a new product line, a new podcast, a new show, always something new. But none of it feels like momentum. It feels like reinvention by necessity. A frantic scramble to find anything that sticks. The reality is sobering. This isn't a second chapter, it's a salvage mission. And as the glow of royal mystique fades and the Montecito bubble begins to shrink, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. There's no amount of lavender candles or high-gloss interviews that can hide the fact that the Sussexes are running out of time and running out of relevance. The media machine backfires. How public backlash, botched narratives, and overexposure are turning the Sussex brand from spectacle to sideshow. For years, Harry and Meghan controlled the narrative. Every headline, every sit-down interview, every perfectly timed leak seemed to serve one purpose: sculpting their version of the truth. From the Oprah bombshell to Spare, from archetypes to Netflix docudramas, the couple operated like master strategists of their own mythos. They weren't just telling their story, they were curating it, carefully, painstakingly, ruthlessly. But now, the media is pushing back. Not tabloids, not royal gossip blogs, mainstream media, legacy institutions, journalists who once fawned over Meghan's modern Duchess image are now quietly, sometimes openly, souring. And the shift isn't just editorial, it's economic. Because when you weaponize the press to craft your own saintly image, and that image starts to rot under scrutiny, the journalists you once used start to turn. Case in point, the Daily Mail. Once a tabloid titan that both criticized and capitalized on royal drama, the Mail recently made a surprising pivot, attacking William and Catherine. After years of treating the Prince and Princess of Wales as golden couple material, their coverage suddenly took a nasty turn. Hit pieces, think pieces, entire podcast episodes filled with sneering speculation. Royal watchers were stunned and suspicious. And they weren't alone. Canel Sinadel, a sharp-eyed analyst of royal media trends, exposed the ploy. She tracked the Mail's subscriber reaction in real time. The result? A total backfire. One episode of Palace Confidential alone saw a tidal wave of backlash, over 11,000 dislikes, 96% negative sentiment in comments, and, most damning of all, a loss of 4,000 subscribers in just 1 week. That's not just a misstep. That's a revolt. Readers and viewers weren't confused. They saw the narrative shift, and they called it what it was: a trial balloon floated by editors possibly cozying up to Montecito. Whether it was an experiment in new royal narratives or a warning shot to the palace, it blew up spectacularly, and the Mail backpedaled hard. Suddenly, the next episode of Palace Confidential featured only safe commentators. No Amanda Platell, no Liz Jones, no Montecito mouthpieces. Rebecca English, the veteran royal correspondent, even went so far as to publicly disagree with her own paper's previous attacks, stating that William and Catherine should be left alone. A quiet mea culpa? Perhaps. A panic-induced cleanup operation? Almost certainly. But this wasn't just about one media outlet. The tides are turning across the board. Journalists are beginning to tire of the contradictions. Meghan claims she was not protected by the palace, but new documents show she demanded control over press releases. Harry says the media destroyed his mental health while launching an international book tour and media blitz. They speak of being misunderstood while simultaneously trademarking their pain and monetizing their trauma. The public sees it, and so does the press. What's worse for Meghan and Harry is that their playbook, emotional exposure, selective vulnerability, glossy authenticity, is no longer original. It's been copied, satirized, and picked apart. Meghan's "I'm just a mom" tone now lands as patronizing. Harry's woe is me demeanor comes off as self-indulgent, and the media, always hungry for fresh angles, is turning from coverage to critique. Even former allies are shifting tone. Piers Morgan was always a vocal critic, yes, but now even more centrist journalists, like Camilla Tominey and Sarah Vine, are starting to question not just what Meghan and Harry say, but why they say it, when they say it, and what they're hoping to gain from it. And it goes beyond opinion columns. It's structural. The Sussex's media strategy is built on volume, on constant output, constant headlines. But in a post-pandemic world flooded with competing content, attention is scarce. And audiences are becoming allergic to spin. And what they crave is honesty. What they're getting from Montecito is manufactured authenticity. And the press is beginning to call it out. Even their former PR partnerships are unraveling. Sunshine Sachs? Gone? Publicists who once sang their praises now speak anonymously about difficult clients, inflexible narratives, and tone-deaf messaging. The very machine that once propelled them to icon status is now sputtering, misfiring, and throwing smoke into its own wheels. And here's the cruel irony. In trying to manipulate the press, Meghan and Harry only empowered it. Their attempt to bury the Princess Charlotte story with SEO trickery, exposed. Their whisper campaigns against Catherine and William, reversed. Their efforts to plant favorable coverage, shattered by real-time audience metrics, backlash, and analytics. The press no longer needs royal access. It just needs eyeballs. And for now, the Sussex's downward spiral is exactly what keeps people watching. But there's something deeper at play here, something far more dangerous to their long-term brand. The public is learning how to decode media manipulation. And once that genie's out of the bottle, no amount of polished interviews, faux vulnerability, or cherry-picked receipts will save them. Because you can fight the press, but once the press starts fighting back, hey, come armed with everything you've ever said, sold, or spun. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry didn't just leave the royal family. They tried to replace with a version of royalty reimagined through Spotify soundbites, Netflix dramatizations, and Instagram-worthy authenticity. They traded duty for branding, protocol for PR, legacy for leverage. But now, 5 years into their post-royal life, the illusion is cracking. And the one thing they've fought hardest to control is slipping through their fingers. The narrative. This was never just about pantyhose. It wasn't about a dress or a hat or a podcast or even a book deal. It was about control. Control over how they're seen. Control over how history remembers them. Control over the story, their story. But every attempt to reclaim it, whether through SEO manipulation, hand-picked interviewers, or emotion-laced docuseries, has led to more questions than answers, more scrutiny, more exposure. Meghan's calculated nude pantyhose comment in the Bloomberg interview was the perfect metaphor for the entire Sussex strategy. Take a minor moment, inflate its meaning, and weaponize it against a larger institution. Make yourself the victim. Paint everyone else as oppressive. Distract from deeper controversies with surface-level grievances. And hope no one notices the switch. But they did notice. Everyone did. The Charlotte dress scandal that Meghan tried to bury came roaring back. The text messages Harry included in Spare, meant to vindicate, did the opposite. They showed a woman more focused on logistics than empathy, a bride unbending in the face of a crying child. And the SEO games meant to drown that story. They exposed a new level of media manipulation that even the most seasoned PR observers found shocking. Meanwhile, Harry's reported plan to sell a dramatized Princess Diana film to Netflix wasn't seen as a tribute. It was seen as desperation. The final card in a deck that had already been played to exhaustion. It was a signal, not of creativity, but of collapse. A last-ditch bid to stay relevant in an industry that has already begun moving on. And Meghan's rumored pivot to talk show host? Though a rebrand without reinvention, a glossy reboot of a brand that's still running on fumes. She's tried a lifestyle, she's tried activism, she's tried vulnerability. But no matter how many times she switches lanes, the public still sees the same contradictions flashing in the rearview mirror. The truth is brutal. The media landscape has caught up to them. The public is no longer blindly accepting curated trauma. Analysts, journalists, even former fans are now pulling receipts, questioning motives, and calling out the calculated choreography behind every headline. And most damning of all, the Sussexes didn't anticipate this backlash. They built their empire on the assumption that they could outmaneuver the press, out-narrate the tabloids, outshine the palace, outplay the public. But the moment they stopped being a mystery, they stopped being magnetic. Authenticity, after all, isn't something you perform. It's something people feel. And right now, the only thing people feel is fatigue. What began as a story of liberation has turned into one of erosion. The sympathy that followed Meghan's emotional disclosures, the intrigue around Harry's rebellion, the curiosity about life beyond the firm, it's all been spent. Spent on sour interviews, one-sided memoirs, and brand partnerships that never quite delivered. The Sussex brand isn't growing, it's shrinking. Not because the media betrayed them, but because they overplayed their hand. Control is a funny thing. The harder you squeeze it, the faster it slips away. And now, Meghan and Harry are standing at a crossroads, not just professionally, but existentially. Do they continue the spin, launching yet another platform, another product, another confessional? Or do they pause, reflect, and finally face the one thing they've avoided all along? The truth isn't something you manufacture, it's something you earn. Because for all the SEO tricks, the selective receipts, the global interviews, and glossy edits, there's one thing the Sussexes still can't rewrite. What really happened behind the palace walls? And no matter how many distractions they throw at the algorithm, the story the world remembers will never be the one they tried to bury.